And so, all right, getting into information about the job fair. So, firstly, it is going to be in person and it's coming up, Wednesday, October 18th from 12 to 4 p.m. And make sure that, if you are interested in attending, that on CareerLink, you do mark attend on the job fair event that you can find there. And I'll be giving some more information about that in just a little bit. But again, the date of the job fair as well as it's going to be in person. Okay, and so for, our job fairs, this one is targeted towards bringing talented CSULB students together with employers who are recruiting for full-time, part-time, and internship opportunities across all majors. So just wanted to emphasize how with this job fair, we are going to have, different kinds of positions, full-time, part-time internships. And so we wanted to make sure, depending on what year you are, for example, if we have first year students coming in versus, students who are in their last year, that we do offer different kinds of opportunities for students to explore, with employers and recruiters at the job fair. All right. And so for the location of the job fair, it is going to be in our University Student Union in our ballroom. Let's see. Oh, and then just a reminder during the presentation for everyone to be on mute. And if you do have any questions, feel free to send those over in the chat. And so it's going to be in the ballrooms. And if you haven't been to the ballrooms area before, it should be near where, Subway and where Carl's Jr. is, but you can also ask other, for example, ASI staff about where the ballroom is specifically as you go into the union there. All right. And so for the COVID policy, again, just based on what, campus policy has set forth is that, masks will be optional. Masks were also optional at our engineering job fair. And at our engineering job fair, we did make sure to provide masks and hand sanitizer, for anyone who needed it there. All right. And so for the check-in process, so there will be 3 check-in kiosks managed by CDC staff. Just because we are aware with, our job fairs, there's a lot of students who do attend them. And so we do want to make sure it's not, just one kiosk for everyone. And so when you get to one of the kiosks, first you'll be asked to scan your ID card, or you can manually input your ID number into the kiosk. Having the ID card does make the process a little bit faster for us. And so I do recommend having your ID card out if possible. But if not, you can put in your number manually. And then from there, you'd be provided with a name tag and a wristband as well. Just, again, as you're talking to employers or networking with other students, and the wristband is just to indicate that you've gone through the check-in process as well. All right. And so going into employers, organizations, and positions. And so for our job fair, for our fall job fair, we are going to have about 100 employers. And so definitely a very big number. And we have a lot of different kinds of employers. For example, we're going to have, Honda, we're going to have Burlington, Caltrans, Childcare Careers, County of Orange, Reyes Beverage Group, Edison, Teach for America. And so again, just like what I was saying earlier with, us having different kinds of, position types for students, we also do want to make sure that we have variety with the kinds of industries that, the companies, who are at this fair will be representing. And so, again, I don't want you all to be overwhelmed by that 100. What I always recommend is as you're looking into those list of employers, which you can find on your career link, we do want to make sure and, to encourage that you are using different search filters, to find which employers do I primarily want to speak to, which employers are aligned with, for example, my major or my field of interest or for my future career goals there. And so, for example, we're going to be having a search filter for organization industry. And so with that filter, you could select, for example, arts design, or education, engineering. And then from there, it would show the companies, within those industries. We also have a filter for position types. If you're looking for only, for example, part-time or internships, or If you are a graduating student, then it would be full-time only. And then, also based on work authorization as well, just acknowledging that, there's different kinds of authorizations for your students. And so, for example, students with US citizenship, or for example, students who may have an F1 visa or a J1 visa. And so highly recommend making use of those search filters. And again, to be able to find, the job fair event, to look at all this information, it is going to be on CareerLink. And CareerLink can be accessed from your single sign-on page. And so that's where you can find all this information. It's where you can mark attend for the event, as well as finding info about the employers and using these different search filters there. And, also on our event page on CareerLink, you can look at job postings and company information. So there's a section for employers, but there's also a section for jobs as well. And so you can specifically see what jobs are these companies currently recruiting for. And I think what's nice about that feature is you can also star employers as interested, as you being interested in them. And so it's a good way for you to keep track of which employers, like, oh, I really want to talk to these employers, these match my major perfectly. And I think just, help with overall organization as you are going through that long list there. And so, again, that's just an overview of, the employers, organizations, and positions. And so again, this can all be found on CareerLink there. All right. And so I do want to say, I know that the job fair can feel, fairly overwhelming and confusing at first. I know that there is a lot going on, and, there's a lot of employers, there's a lot of students, lots of conversations going on, at the, tables to your left and right. And so I do want to recommend, especially if this is your first job fair, and, also if you are returning to our job fairs, that, to take a pause, maybe you can just start off with, okay, let me, look at all the tables, scope out the locations of the employers that you want to see. And, you can always take a step outside. I know for our engineering job fair, we had some spaces where it went from the ballroom, and then there was an outdoor patio area. And so if you just wanted to, like stand by the door, kind of get some fresh air in, again, take that break for yourself if needed. And just to kind of, regroup, regather yourself there. But I do want to emphasize, to make sure, not to leave the fair itself. Again, sometimes our job fairs, we're outside. And so, with that, you're able to kind of take a step off to the side. But because this is going to be in our ballrooms, I do want to make sure that you didn't, wait in line, got inside and then had to rejoin the line again because, you went outside. And so again, just take, whatever breaks you need there. And yeah, just really want to encourage that overall. All right. And so we're going to be starting off with some tips before the fair. And so before the job fair, so make sure to research your top employers. And so, not just only looking at the information we have on CareerLink, but for example, if you were interested in Edison, looking at Edison's website, what are their values? What kind of work do they do? Do they have a section talking about upcoming projects? And it's just a really nice way to, again, make sure that, you have the knowledge you need about them when you speak to them. But also when you do have that conversation, for example, with a company representative, that you do stand out more by showing, I understand what the company does. This is how they align with me. And I think those are the candidates that employers and recruiters really remember, again, like, wow, like, you took the time to research and you understand us. And so, for example, whether it is those shared values, or if you, really understand that, oh, they have a big emphasis on people skills and communication, and they really want to emphasize that to them during my conversation. But also, are they mainly looking for entry-level hires? But with that, is there room for, career growth at that company, or is it mainly just entry level? And so again, making sure you're putting in that time for that research there, because again, it's really going to pay off. You want to make sure not to go into the fair with the expectation of, oh, they'll let me know about their company, and they will share information about the company. But again, to really make yourself stand out, doing that research beforehand. And we're looking at before the fair, so important to create that action plan for yourself where, you know, again, it's good to be flexible, when you go into the job fair, but I think it's nice to help organize yourself in terms of, for example, what are my low priority and high priority companies? And so, for example, for low priority companies, it's like, I'm kind of interested in them, but I'm not, really looking for a job, specifically within that industry, but, I'd be open to it. And so, for example, maybe what you could do is start off with those companies and, kind of like, let me help kind of like warm up here. Let me be able to practice as well. But then, on the flip side, you might want to start off with your high priority companies instead. The companies who are like, this is like my dream job. This is the company I've been wanting to work for such a long time now. Or, the job description sounds so great. This is exactly what I want. And so, by starting off with your high priority companies, you would have more energy because, that would kind of be the start of the day for you. And also, it would ensure time with those companies as well, just because, again, depending on how popular that company is, how long the line is, you may want to, keep in mind, like, okay, for high priority, do I want to keep it near the beginning of the day, near the middle of my day? I just definitely don't recommend near the end of the day for the job fair because, again, we do want to make sure you get that time to speak to your high priority companies. And so just kind of take some time to think about the plan that you want to make for yourself there. So again, just recap, research, 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 as well as creating that action plan for yourself. All right. And so, again, make sure that we're also brainstorming interview questions for company representatives. And so, just as, they're most likely going to be asking you some questions, it's really good to be able to have questions, to ask them as well, to show that interest there. And so, it's great to have a mix of, broad and specific questions, kind of like open-ended, closed-ended questions. And again, asking these questions shows interest. It shows, I'm taking what you're giving me, or, from my own past research, I do have these questions about what I found or the information I came across, about your company. And just as for the representatives, this is a great way for them to see like if you would be a good fit for any jobs they're hiring for. This is also a great space for you to figure out, would this be a good fit for me? And it's really, again, helpful for you to learn more about the job because, again, it can sound great on paper, but as you hear more about it, you may think, oh, actually, the hours or, the job duties isn't what I had in mind. And so I don't think this will work out then. And so again, it's a two-way road there. All right. And then let me see here. Okay, let me see. And so, yes, for the question in the chat, I'm going to share a resource at the end for everyone. And again, our Career Center website has a lot of great information, but I'll be sharing that near the end. And so, just as some examples of questions here. So, for example, like how would you describe the culture of the company? Is this more, like independent projects, or is it very like team oriented? And then also, for example, like what do they like best about working about the company? Just kind of hearing for these representatives, what have their experiences been like firsthand as a current employee of the company? And so again, just thinking about different questions that you can be asking, representatives. All right. And so you definitely want to make sure to prepare your resume and cover letter. And so making sure, that they're updated and organized. And, I would say primarily you can focus on the resume. But, for example, if you had, a few companies that you were very interested in and wanted to provide a cover letter for, you could. But at job fairs, typically they would mainly, expect, some kind of resume document there. And again, I think it's going to be really helpful for those target companies to have tailored versions of your resume. And so, for example, from my work with students, I know for students, for a lot of them, I know they do like to have one resume that they use and apply for, multiple positions. And, that is one approach, but I always recommend, tailoring. When I say tailoring, I mean incorporating what are keywords you're seeing come up a lot in the position description, as well as, for example, again, what were the company's values? How can I show that I am also upholding those in the work I've done from my past experiences? And so when I say tailored, I don't mean you have to start a completely new document, a completely new resume each time, but taking your resume and making some changes here and there, like, oh, I'm gonna put this internship first because that is like the same kind of work for this position I'm applying for. Or like, for my skill section, maybe I should have more of a focus on social media and marketing versus my like lab experience from being like a biology major, for example. And then you know, I always recommend bringing multiple copies of your resume. And so definitely have the copies for the employers that you definitely know you want to speak to. But also, I would say for, as you're going through the job fair, you might come across employers who you think to yourself, wow, like I didn't know they would be here. I want to learn more about them. That sounds great. And so you would have those extra copies to be able to share with them as well. And then, also you can definitely prepare your portfolio too. And so depending on the kind of industries, you're interested in. So of course, having that resume, and you can also bring copies of references if you'd like. If you wanted to offer those to representatives, but also, for example, for students who are like in arts and design, you can show, work samples as well. If you have, for example, like, okay, these are printouts of some, pieces that I've done before, you can definitely show that as well. Or, for example, if you're someone who's in, writing and editing, being able to share, oh, like these are, some samples from, past papers I've done there. And so overall, I would say resume is the most important document to bring. And then, it is up to you if you wanted to bring some more of these like supplemental materials, like cover letters, references, like work samples. But also just keeping in mind, you don't want to overwhelm the representative as well with, kind of like, this is like, this whole pile belongs to me. And so just being intentional with what you decide to bring there. And definitely recommend bring a notebook or a planner and a pen for notes. And so, again, as you're going through the fair, there's going to be a lot that's going on. And after the fair, it's kind of hard to remember everything that happened. So, for example, after you speak to each employer, I always think it's good to kind of take down notes of, oh, like this is what we discussed. These are some highlights. Maybe some like interesting facts that came up about, the conversation that you two had. But also, if they are, for example, maybe doing another company info session, or if they're going to be doing another recruiting event later, being able to take note of those dates, for example. All right. And then, before the fair as well, I do recommend, of course, having a folder, I think, to keep your, copies of your resume, other documents you want to bring all together, just so it's not a lot of loose papers for you and it keeps the resumes also just kind of like clean and organized. But I do recommend, let me see. And so let me see here. All right, so we'll get to the questions, yeah, near the end there as well. But yes, so again, using a small bag and or folder. And so it's just easier to navigate the job fair, with like a small bag and just a folder as well, as you're, going through, waiting in line, shaking hands, having your conversations. It is okay if you have your backpack with you. I would say it's very common to see students with a lot of backpacks just because, again, most likely you just came from class or you might have a class later. Unfortunately, we don't have a space to be able to store all students' backpacks and belongings just because, again, it would be, a lot for us to, be able to monitor there. And so it's just easiest if students hold on to their belongings. And I did want to bring up some options that you do have. So, for example, we do have some locker spaces on campus. So I know in the rec center, um, those lockers are free for students to use. And I know we do have like Luxor One on campus lockers. I think this picture is around like LA3, kind of like in that walkway, right next to like all the LA buildings. And so I believe for Luxor, if I'm remembering correctly, that is pay. You have to pay for that though. But those are options, for example, if you really didn't want to have your backpack with you, then to either store them in there, or if possible on the day of the fair, if you are able to fit whatever you need for classes in like a smaller bag, I think that could be a good option too. But yes, just want to provide some options there. And then when we're looking at attire for before the fair, I definitely recommend, conservative business attire. Again, if you're unsure of what to wear or like, oh, what's common for my industry, you could definitely do some research of that online. But I feel like it's always safe to kind of lean towards more conservative attire there. And I'll show some examples of that in the next few slides here. But also make sure not to wear things that could distract from you. Again, we want to keep the focus on you, on your content, what you're sharing with the employer, your experiences, your background. And so, for example, some things that could distract if you are wearing heavy perfume or cologne, and if you are wearing lots of jewelry, I do recommend, just to kind of keep both of those light there. Again, keeping the focus mainly on you and, your experiences and qualifications there as you speak to representatives. All right, and so I do have some examples to share here. So first, this is business casual. And so you can just kind of see from this picture here, we have like a blouse on one side, with like a blazer, a sweater. On the other hand, we do have, like a button down. We also have like a suit jacket as well. And I always say if you don't have a suit jacket, you can either go for that blazer option, or you can always just pair that with a tie as well too. And, for both of them, they do have, for example, slacks, like dress pants. And then we also have some dress shoes or, comfortable pumps, or flats there. And, I do recommend, for example, if it's like, oh, I don't have, access, to these kinds of clothes currently. And so what I recommend is, for example, then if you do have like dark colored pants, you could go for that as well. Or if you do have like darker shoes to wear that too, just so the outfit kind of blends in together there and just so there isn't attention given to, oh, like this is more of a casual look. And so I feel like going darker, with attire can help out there. Um, and so this is what, I'd recommend as one example here. But also we do have another with business formal. And so this is more of like going for that traditional suit look, suit jacket, suit pants as well, kind of like the matching colors, which is usually recommended. And then again, we have the dress shoes and the pumps there as well. And so, just some options there. But overall, I always say, yeah, like a formal blouse, button-up dress shirt, or like a formal shirt with like, a tie and, like dark colored pants there. I always feel like, those are safe options overall. All right. And so that's just some, background on attire, just how to dress for the fair there. Let's see. Okay. And then also before I move on, I do recommend that if you are, before the fair, if you know you're going to be doing like maybe a lot of walking across campus or you have a few classes, I do recommend, bringing that change of clothes with you, just so you don't come to campus in your business attire, then you're kind of going around campus, getting sweaty. And so I do recommend bringing an extra pair of clothes, bringing, your business attire to change into later if possible. All right. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and go into during the fair. And so for during the fair, so for navigating that, so firstly, I do recommend being punctual and arriving early. And so, of course, very important to be on time for the fair, but I definitely do recommend showing up early just because, again, our queue, our line does get long, I want to say fairly quickly. And so just to be able to make sure that maybe you get like a closer spot to the front of the line to arrive there early for the fair. You can arrive anytime that you want to, but I do recommend showing up, earlier if possible, just because that way, hopefully you secure more of that face-to-face time with the employers that you really want to speak to. And just because as the day progresses, it does get a little busier because again, students are leaving classes, they're joining in. And so just to keep that in mind there. And then, during the fair, I would definitely recommend make sure to manage your expectations. And so when I say that, I know sometimes we have a very set idea of how something like an event is going to be like, but, just to, be aware that it is going to be a mix of different personalities, processes, and interview types. And so, for example, what one representative, the way that they interact with you, most likely will be different from another representative. One representative may, just start off with, they may want to just kind of do like a mini interview. of like, what's your education? What are your top skills? What are your experiences? Um, and then another, representative may want to just, like, oh, let's just have some more time for small talk, so yeah, how are you liking your time here at Long Beach? What are you up to these days? And so it can really vary. And so just to keep that in mind there. Um, and during the fair, I do recommend visiting tables with fewer crowds first. Just because that way, I think it helps you make the most out of your time of, oh, those three tables are empty and these two tables have five students there. Unless it is one of your high priority companies, which you do want to get in line for. But if not, then I'd say go to the empty tables, in that time while students are waiting for that table, you may have been able to talk to two representatives in that time, for example. And so what I also do recommend is, instead of just getting in line immediately, to kind of just gauge how some of these interactions are going, it's completely fine to go up to the table, just kind of like, maybe get some materials and kind of observe from a little distance where, you could get back in line with your materials and kind of overhear what, they're talking about. Or if you just kind of, want to, step off to the side, kind of like look at some other tables while you're waiting, but just kind of hearing what's going on at that table there. And that's why I always recommend. It's nice to just kind of kind of slowly walk through the job there, just to kind of hear like, okay, what topics are coming up? What questions are they asking students? And I feel like that way, it's just a nice way for you to kind of like start warming up as well of, okay, this is maybe what I should prepare when I get up to the front of the line and when I speak to them. And so again, just, kind of keeping, those different conversations in mind there. All right. And so, what I do recommend is what I was saying earlier, writing down notes, writing down interesting facts from employers. And I know there was a question of, should I write this down or should I take notes right in front of them? And so I would typically recommend not to do that right in front of them. Just because, again, we want to make sure the focus is on the conversation and you're making that eye contact as well versus them kind of looking at you as you're taking notes and then looking down. What I do feel is fine though is, for example, let's say you're getting near to the end of the interview or the getting near to the end of the conversation, and they're giving you maybe like, oh, some important like dates of oh, we have an info session coming up next week at this time. That's when I would say it's fine to bring out that notebook or planner to take notes of that. But I do recommend not doing it during as you're talking to them. And I do recommend, after you finish your conversation, not to kind of stay right in front of them and to take down notes from what you discussed, but just kind of step off to the side, maybe go down a few tables and just kind of like take notes for yourself there. Just so the employer can focus on the next student versus kind of having you like in their like peripheral still of just kind of being in front of them and taking those notes. And then, like what I was saying earlier, be prepared for questions that they're going to be asking you. And so, for example, why are you here? What do you know about our organization? What can you bring to our company? And so, for example, why are you here? What's your goal? What, are you looking to get out of this? For example, what do you know about our org, like our services? How long we've been, in business there? What can you bring to our company in terms of skills, experiences? How does your degree tie back to us, your future degree? And so again, just being prepared for those questions. And again, I do have a resource that I can share with everyone at the end there for questions that they may ask you and questions you can also ask them as well. And then let's, to follow up from what I was saying earlier about asking those representatives questions. And so these questions can also involve areas, for example, like, oh, like, what is the application process like? I saw that you were hiring for blank job. Would it just be, applying, for example, through CareerLink? Or, would I have to provide other documents as well? And then you can also ask them like, some next steps. And so, okay, so after I submit my application, let's see, would I just, I would just wait back to hear from you in the meantime. Or for example, if they are having, a recruiting event next week, I'm like, oh, if I'm interested in that job, should I attend that event as well? And so just to kind of see, what would be the next steps for you overall, with that company. And I really wanted to emphasize, do not ask about salary and benefits. And so again, that should come up, that could definitely come up. It's very important for a job, but that should come up much later down the line in the interview process. And so, for this, again, this is, just for them to get to know you, you to get to know them. And, I recommend because salary is a, fairly important and extensive topic. And I feel like, for the representative, I don't think they would have a lot of time to get into that, into the details of it. And so definitely during the fair, do not ask about salary benefits. That conversation can come up later on. Okay. And so during the fair as well, so yes, very importantly, make sure to hand out your resume. And so make sure to do that. For example, when you go up to, when it's your turn, you're like, hi, my name is so and so. So great to meet you. Here's my I'll just make sure a copy of my resume. I usually recommend, yeah, you can have it during the conversation and not bringing it out at the very end, because again, depending on how long the line is, they might be a little rushed. I'm like, great to meet you. Okay, going on next. And so I really want to make sure that they do get your resume there and that they do have it as well. And in terms of the materials that the representative gives out, so definitely ask for business cards. That's a great way, versus you kind of having to like take down like, oh, your email address, first and last name. Can you spell that out? Make sure to ask for those business cards. And I also do want to say, be very careful with company freebies. And so I know, from job fairs and employers, some of them do bring, for example, like, oh, like, we have like, free stress balls you can take or like hand sanitizer. Um, but I do recommend that, you're not taking, every item from every table. You want to be just conscious of that because again, I do feel like employers will take note if you're just trying to, get a bunch of freebies from the tables and not really focusing on your conversations with the representatives. And so, I recommend just kind of having it be, like in moderation there. I think especially for, companies you're interested in, for example, if they're giving out stress balls, you don't want to be playing with that while you're talking to them. And so, maybe just kind of taking a little bit here and there. But again, make sure that the focus for this job fair is for you to network and to just, make the best impression that you can on these employers and recruiters. And again, definitely as you're going throughout the fair, you can network with other students and campus members. For example, while you're in line, it might be a little bit of a wait for some companies. And so, you can get to know some students. And, I always say you never know how you can all be supporting each other later down the line. Oh, like you're interning there right now. Oh, like I've always had a company in the back of my head there. Like, can you share a little bit more about that? And so, again, just seeing this as a great way to kind of build new relationships there and new connections. All right. And so I really wanted to make sure that we, take the time to hone in on your elevator pitch. And this is going to be super important as you talk to the different employers. And so this is a really great way for you to kind of give a detailed, concise summary of who you are in a quick matter of time, like 30 seconds to a minute. And so for an elevator pitch, it is essentially a quick summary of yourself and your background. And so it's really important to understand your audience. You want to make sure that what you're sharing is going to be relevant for them. And, again, make sure that you're tailoring that pitch. And so depending, you might be interested, oh, I really like marketing, but I also really like fashion. And so for understanding your audience and tailoring that pitch, making sure that you're including elements that are relevant for those different fields in your pitch there. And so again, just like the resume, not having to create a completely new pitch, but just thinking about, okay, instead of bringing up that experience, let me highlight this instead here. And make sure to show that positivity, that energy. And I really recommend, to have it come across as more natural or organic. Don't memorize. I always say to practice. And so I think what's helpful is, maybe you can memorize a few key points, but I really don't recommend trying to memorize it word for word. If you feel like that approach, works with you, you can definitely do that. But why I recommend not memorizing word for word is if you kind of blank out on a sentence, it's kind of like you're stuck and you're kind of frozen. And I've had that happen before of like, I don't know where to go from here. And so I really do recommend just kind of maybe keeping a few key points in mind of like, okay, let me bring up education, let me bring up my current internship, let me bring up past club experience, and let me bring up future goals. And that way, I feel like it'll be easier to kind of focus in on that versus, okay, my name is so and so, I'm a third year. Oh, wait, no, I want to mention that later. And so just keeping that in mind there. All right. And so for the elevator pitch. And so for some areas to focus in on, for example, who I am. What's your name, first of all? Very important for the player to know. What's your year? What's your major? Do you have like a minor or an emphasis with that? What are some of your professional interests, for example? Like, oh, my career goal is to work with sports teams, as a physical therapist from my, for example, like kinesiology degree. And so, yeah, just kind of giving them that overview there. And then going into what I can offer. What are some experiences, skills, accomplishments that you want to highlight to them? And so, what I do recommend is we're not giving them your entire resume. That's what your resume handout is for. In this elevator pitch, let's just give some very quick, relevant highlights from your experiences. And when you talk about what you can offer, making sure that your background, as you're talking about it, aligns with the company's needs. And so, for example, if I were looking at like a childcare organization, I do want to keep in mind, okay, from the description, they're really focusing on, like multitasking, empathy, patience, and like holistic development for, the children they look after. And so, for example, if as you think about your experiences, you may want to think about, oh, I definitely do want to talk about my volunteering with the Isabel Patterson like Child Development Center. But also, I do have, a leadership experience from retail as a manager, and I can really highlight the multitasking and working with a lot of different customers that way. And so, again, just seeing, yeah, how does my background help the company here with what they need? What are their goals in their work? All right. And then, also, what are you looking for? This is important for the company to know, like, what kind of position or experience are you seeking? And so, for example, if they're recruiting for someone full time and you're bringing up, part-time work, I think that's going to tell them from the get-go, like, this is not going to work. But if you already know that, oh, from CareerLink, I saw that they're recruiting for like a summer internship, and that's exactly what I'm looking for, then that just shows to the employer, okay, perfect. There's a fit in that aspect there of position type. And also bringing up, why are you interested in the company? So this is a question that I feel like I see a lot of answers for leaning towards, oh, because I'm qualified, or because it's my major, or because I have a lot of experiences, um, in this field. And so that is all great and very valid information. But at the same time, it's going to be something that the employers have heard a lot about already. You want to be more specific. How do I stand out? And so, for example, let's say I was interested in Kaiser. And let's say, for Kaiser, I know they have a lot of community resources. Let's see. And so, for example, oh, I love how, Kaiser, provides support to a lot of different populations with community resources like blank. I really resonate with that just because, again, I've done a lot of volunteering in my community and helping to give back in different ways. And so it's showing like, this is why I'm interested, but I am also tying it back to myself as well. And then in terms of what do I hope for the future? So what do you hope happens after the meeting? And so, for example, if you really, want to emphasize, I would be, very interested in, formally interviewing for the position, provided the opportunity. This is exactly what I'm looking for. Or if you're mainly looking for, oh, I would love to continue to stay in touch. Just to be able to make a new connection that way. And people come into the job fair with different goals. And so some, I think for the most part are looking for positions. But, some students may just want to focus on, oh, I just really wanted to explore the job fair, really, experience talking to employers and yeah, just adding connections, that I can cultivate on LinkedIn there. And so to give some examples, I have two examples to show for everyone. So as we can see here, Hello, my name is John Rogers. Introducing yourself. I am a sophomore at the University of South Florida who's interested in the state of the art applications of the IT major. And so I can see name, I can see what year you are, I can see what school you go to, your major, but also a central interest area for yourself. From here, I'm interested in expanding beyond my academic background in the fields of mobile applications for a graduate degree in applied informatics. And so, we're seeing that, for this person, they really want to expand upon their academics, by eventually applying for a graduate degree, in applied informatics there. And so again, we're looking at, okay, so this is like a future educational goal. And we see the field they're interested in mobile applications. And that ties back to, again, the state of the art applications here that they mentioned. And then from here, my current formation and information sharing and online collaboration would be a perfect start to further grow as a mobile application developer with your company. And so, again, we're looking at, okay, what are they currently working on? What they've been doing with information sharing and online collaboration. And they're tying that into, okay, that can help, for that company setting, for mobile apps. And then, thank you in advance for sharing information with me on your internship opportunities. And so highlighting they're very interested in internships. And so this is just one example here. There's lots of different ways to format the elevator pitch there. And so this is one example. Next example. So I have, or I'm working on a degree in business communications from UC. And so we see that they have their degree in BC and what school they also graduated from. I've been an intern at Cali Dreams for 2 years, where I'm currently working as a development assistant. So they're going to talk about their current internship. And then from there, I've been able to succeed in that role by bringing operating procedure improvement and successful fundraising opportunities to the company. And so they're getting some detail about some of the work that they've done, and then going into, I believe my strengths in prospect material production could bring age support, agency connections, and strategic calendar development to the table as your business developer. And so, from their work with, operating procedure or just different company operations, they want to bring their strengths from prospect material production and agency connections, into this business developer position with this company here. And so, again, we're seeing a lot of highlights about experiences. We're seeing, what are some interest areas. We're, of course, seeing what are they currently studying or have studied before. And so, again, just wanted to show some examples here just to kind of help you in that process as you do brainstorm there. Okay. And so going into after the fair. So closing us off here. So after the fair, really important, reflect on that experience. What do you feel like you did well? I think I really did great with maybe small talk and sharing about my experiences, but maybe I do want to improve on when I talk about, how my education relates back to the field there. I feel like I was kind of going off on a tangent and I was kind of maybe rambling. I got a little nervous there. And also, how did networking go for you? Were you able to get to your target employers? Or, if not, what will be some next steps you're taking there? Will you go on their website? Will you still be submitting a job application there? And also just looking at the different contacts that you've made. And so, like, okay, great. I want to definitely add on these contacts onto my LinkedIn, later today, for example. And then definitely organize your notes. So I think it's really helpful to take the notes that you have and putting them on an Excel sheet, because you're going to be getting a lot of, maybe some freebies, business cards, maybe some flyers or brochures that they're giving out. And so lots of information. So I definitely say for any contact info, any specific notes that you have about the companies, having that on an Excel sheet just to keep track of which ones you spoke to, but also, what were some highlights of what I spoke to them about there. Yeah, it's a lot of reflection, and part of that, taking down those notes from the job there. All right, and then following up with company representatives. So I really recommend sending thank you emails within 24 to 48 hours. I usually recommend on the same day. And, I say this is, a very, big courtesy for them, because again, they took time to speak with you. You want to show your interest. You want to make, continue to have that good impression on them. And I feel like thank you emails are a big part of that. And so the more specific you can be for the representatives, the more unique the emails will be. Because keep in mind, they're talking to a lot of students throughout the day. You want to make sure it's not just, thank you so much for speaking to me. I love learning about blank company. I hope to hear, I hope to hear from you soon, for example, if you talked about, in regards to the position. And I feel like that, it's a nice thank you, but it sounds fairly generic. We do want to make sure, like, oh, if you spoke to a representative about a certain project they have coming up and have that related back to your own academic interests, definitely bring that up because the representative, it'll be easier for them to remember you that way versus just a thank you. And then, also make sure to follow representative instructions about applying for positions. And so, if they're letting you know, please email us, do not apply on CareerLink, email us directly. Make sure to do so. Just again, keeping in mind whatever they're sharing with you there. And then also on LinkedIn, maintain that online presence. I feel like LinkedIn is one of the best ways for people to remain connected, after a job fair. And so make sure that your profile is updated, that you do, add on maybe some education, some experiences, some skills there, just so it's not like a blank profile when they connect with you. And then again, yeah, reach out to those employers, recruiters you spoke to, connect with them. And that way you still keep them in your network versus I met you once and I hope to hear back from you and just kind of leaving it at that email. Really recommend those follow-ups with LinkedIn there. All right. And then, if you did receive feedback, which representatives do sometimes provide about your resume, or just from seeing other resumes, maybe someone, you're sitting next to in line, you're sharing, your resumes there. Make sure to make updates. This is again to help continuously improve your resume, help you as you apply for jobs later down the line. And, for the connections you made, depending on if they are on LinkedIn or aren't on LinkedIn, touch base over email or LinkedIn from time to time. So whether it's sending an email here and there or, sending them a LinkedIn message, again, we want to make sure we're not overwhelming the, recruiter employer with, every like daily messages or daily emails, but just kind of like here and there, like, hi, so-and-so, hope you've been doing well. I saw, on your LinkedIn about,
शुगर कोटेड लग रहा है
let's see, oh, and then just a reminder
जवाब के
at
लिए
let's see, I believe someone
very sugar coated है.
speaking. If I could have you please go on mute. Let's see. Thank you. And so, for example, like, oh, I saw on LinkedIn an upcoming project you have there. It's very exciting. Very happy for you and your team. And then, also continue that research on companies and jobs after. And so, continue to kind of stay posted on, companies you're interested in, new companies you found out about. And so just to be able to, allow you to keep learning about, what positions are out there. And, if companies are going to be at other events as well, and not just, the job fair that they attended with us there. All right. And so for some resources to share, so I really do recommend making the most out of our Career Center website. So it's careers.csulb.edu. And let me see, in the chat, I am going to send one of my links. Let me resend it here. Okay, and so for the link that I sent, it will take you to our page for making the most of the job fair, where we do have, tips for before, during, after the job fair. And we also do have a PDF handout that you can look at as well for, again, how do I really, make the most out of my time there, in like talking to employers and preparing on like in, after the job fair as well. And so I really recommend that website, again, for the handout, for tips overall. And then I also did want to share another website, which does have tips for, interviewing. And I know when you're, talking to employers at the job fair, it's not exactly an interview. I would say, again, to keep in mind that, this isn't like a formal interview. This isn't like, oh, I am, going to be able to, get a job right after this. Again, it depends on what the employers are looking for. Again, this is mainly a space for them to get to know you to get to know them. And if it does lead to a more formal interview, great. But again, like what I was saying earlier, to help manage those expectations there. All right. And so let me see. All right, I'll send that link at the end of the presentation. And so just wanted to give another highlight about our support services. And so we do have drop-in advising. So these are 15 to 20-minute sessions with career peer advisors. You can access them via a career link or Beach Connect. And these are hours here as well. Feel free to take a picture if you'd like or a screenshot. And so on Tuesdays, we do have extended hours, but just to keep in mind from 3 to 6:30, it is on Zoom only. And drop-in advising is a great space to get your resume reviewed. You can, also ask about, like interviewing techniques that you can use when you speak to the employers. For example, how should my nonverbal behavior be, or how should I maybe answer this kind of question? We can help out with that. And we can also look at your LinkedIn profile too. And if you do want a longer, appointment, that would be with our career counselors. And so those are 30 to 60-minute appointments. And you can schedule those via Beach Connect. If you are alumni, you will schedule appointments via our front desk, and I'll show our number in the next slide. And again, for drop-in advising, career counseling, you can either do Zoom or in person. For drop-in advising, yes, we offer Zoom in person Monday through Friday. And so career counseling could be a great space if you wanted to take, more time to get your resume reviewed, or if you have like a CV, for example. Which, I do recommend, just again, because for drop-in advising, 20 minutes, and there's only so many questions we can answer in that time frame there. And so just keeping, these resources in mind as you continue to prep for the job fair. And so we can be found in Brotman Hall 250, right next to the fountain. And our office is open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And this is also our phone number here as well. And so just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for joining in. Appreciated having you all here.